All right. Well, welcome back to our webinar series with Operation Injured Soldier. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about renewed hope and this reality of mental health and mental wellness as we dive into this webinar series. We are at this point over halfway through the series, and we've talked a lot about trauma. We've talked a lot about how trauma impacts us. We've talked about chronic pain. We've talked about relationships. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of talking about what you're going through and the cost of silence, and really, what does it mean to break the cycle of bottled up pain. For those of you who are just joining us, or you've been going through our series, I'm a licensed mental health professional. I work with individuals. I've been doing this work for about 10 years. And I deal a lot with individuals who are not processing through their pain well, people who bottle it up. In fact, I had a meeting earlier today with a friend who has been dealing with prolonged grief and trauma over the last 3 years. 3 years ago, he lost someone really close to him. And then 6 months later, he lost another friend. And then 6 months after that, he lost another friend. And then he lost a staff member. And just recently, another staff member on his team passed away. So within 3 years, he's lost five people. And this is what he said to me. Okay, and maybe this will resonate with you because I think this is a great space to start. He said, I don't normally like to talk about my feelings, so I really don't know what to do in therapy. And he had an hour drive to come up and see me today. And he said, I spent the entire hour really just thinking about what I was going to say while I was here because he doesn't know how to share some of the grief that he has been through. And here's the probably the core idea that we want to work through. Pain that isn't expressed doesn't disappear. It just finds another way to speak. And I've worked with individuals over the last 10 years who don't like to talk about their feelings, don't like to talk about the pain, don't like to talk about the things they've been through. And so instead of talking about it, they just act it out. I have friends who've acted it out with self harm. I've had friends who've acted it out with alcohol abuse or drug abuse. I've had friends who've acted it out with shopping or other addictions. I've had friends who've acted it out with reckless sexual behavior. There's all kinds of ways that we will find a way to let out what we're not talking about because the pain just doesn't go away. The goal is not necessarily to get you in this space to talk about your feelings. Not right away. It's really to understand how all of this works. And I think the first thing I want to talk about with you is two words. And these are words that, especially for those of us who have been through hard times and don't like to talk about our feelings, you've probably said these words. The words are, I'm fine. Those two words are typically words that we employ when we don't want to talk about how we really feel. There's a researcher and a counselor who lives in the Tennessee area. He says that FINE is an acronym for feelings in need of expression. Whenever we say, I'm fine, it's fine, or everything's fine, we're probably not fine, it's probably not fine, and everything is not going to be fine. What did you learn growing up? What did you learn through your military experience? What about strong people and what do they do with pain? They usually have answers like this, and this is what I've encountered, and you probably have too. Suck it up, push through, don't bitch, handle your problems. Someone else has it worse. Don't burden your family. Just keep moving. A couple that I want to diesel on, and maybe one of the more important ones, is someone else has it worse. So you have you ever had that? You ever had that where you're talking about how you're feeling, and you're explaining what happened, and then you say something like, but there's starving kids in Africa. I shouldn't feel this way. Well, here's the reality. Yes, there are starving kids in Africa. Yes, someone else maybe does have it worse. But just because somebody has it worse doesn't necessarily mean that your experience and what you're going through is any less significant. How about this? How about, hey, I'm going through something really tough. I'm having a bad day, and there are starving kids in Africa. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And in fact, what happens is when we minimize our own pain, we're basically lying to ourselves and telling ourselves that it doesn't really matter, that what we're going through is hard. In fact, right before I got on this webinar, I got off the phone with a friend of mine who got some really bad news today. Just terrible news. And he said, I know it's going to get better. And I was like, yeah, maybe it will. What if it doesn't? Why do you have to write it off? Why not just sit in the moment? And this is a big one. Just sit in the suck for a moment and just say, hey, today was a bad day and I didn't want it. I didn't order it and I have to eat it anyway. The idea that we would just suck it up or push through it or not complain or handle our own problems or somebody else has it worse or I don't want to be a burden to anybody or I just need to keep moving. That is a really surefire way to get yourself into all sorts of emotional frustration and tension. A lot of those messages will work in the short term, and maybe in a crisis or when you need to compartmentalize, that can be really useful. And there are moments when you don't have the luxury of processing through what you're experiencing. You've got a job to do. In fact, I'm meeting with someone right now who, since January, has just had crap after crap after crap experiences that he's been through. And right now, after his father-in-law died, his wife shortly after gave birth to their third child. He's working full time. He's got a family at home that he's taking care of. And then on top of it, his wife needs to have surgery. And he just said, I'm just tired. I am waiting. I am waiting for something to change. And he doesn't have time to process and he doesn't have time to work through the emotions. He's literally just trying to keep his job and keep his family going and keep his life alive. Like, okay, you don't have time to process now, but I did tell him, I said, hey, when this is all done, you need to stop by my office. You need to sit down. We got to talk through this because you can't carry all of this on your own. And what happens is if we tell ourselves that this survival strategy that we've come up with to get through these instances, what happens is that can actually become a lifestyle. And what helps you survive a moment may not help you heal from it. And I know I've said this on this webinar before, this series before, but I'm going to say it again. There's a difference between dealing with stress and healing from stress. A lot of us have coping skills, and some of those coping skills are healthy. Some of them are not healthy, whether that's addictive substances or alcohol or shopping or talking to a therapist. There's all kinds of ways that we can cope with stress, but healing from stress, healing from what overabundant amounts of stress have done to us, that's an entirely different animal. And what helps you cope may not actually be what helps you heal. And here are, I think, and maybe you've experienced this too. Here are 3 different responses to pain when it comes our way, whether that's emotional pain or psychological pain. Suppression, and that's when we say, I don't have time to feel this. I'm not going to feel this right now. I'm not going to allow myself to feel this. I'm just going to keep the lid on it. Avoiding is when you say, I'll make sure I don't have to feel this. And that's when we keep ourselves really, really busy and we keep ourselves really, really engaged. And there's a lot of ways that you can avoid dealing with pain and stress and grief. But here's what I will say. Grief can be avoided, but it will not be ignored. You can find all sorts of ways to distract yourself and keep yourself busy, but after a while, it's going to come out. And when it does, there's going to be a cost to it. And the bill comes due always. So we suppress it, we avoid it, and sometimes we can process through it, which is I can experience this without allowing it to control me. And that's actually the best way to go about it, to say, listen, this is happening, or this happened to me. This is really hard. It doesn't have to take me out. It doesn't have to dominate me. It doesn't have to be something that destroys my life. I need to feel this. I need to experience this. And here's the key space. Strength isn't never feeling pain. Strength is knowing what to do with pain when it comes. The strongest people I know are the ones who are willing to face their pain. They're willing to talk about it. They're willing to open up. And that's one of the best ways to go about it. I want to talk a little bit about something I call the pressure cooker. And if you're not familiar with pressure cookers, I'm sure you can Google it and you can, or chat GTP it and you get a whole picture of it. But a pressure cooker is basically what it sounds. It just builds up pressure on the inside that allows things to heat up and actually cook at a really fast rate. And the human soul is a lot like a pressure cooker if we don't deal with what's going on inside. Every difficult experience adds something. It adds loss, it adds fear, it adds anger, disappointment, shame, physical pain, relationship conflict, career transition, feeling misunderstood, regret. And we tell ourselves things like, I'm good. But the pressure hasn't necessarily disappeared. When bottled pain often changes form to things like from hurt to anger, from fear to control, from grief to withdrawal, from shame to defensiveness, from overwhelm to numbness, from helplessness to irritability. We can get into all sorts of trouble. I have a really close friend that I've worked with for years now. When he started processing through the grief of losing friends in combat, he started pulling away from his family. The grief started to bring him to a place where he didn't want to talk to anybody. He started getting more and more isolated. He actually found a really great therapist, and his therapist was called Two Hearted IPA. And you know what's really interesting? Two Hearted IPA was a very cheap therapist and really effective. And his wife didn't like the fact that he drank. So what he did is he just drank by himself. And he got into a really, really tough spot. He was in his barn, drinking alone, night after night. And his wife missed him. And he wanted to be able to reach out to her, talk about what was going on, but it's just too hard. And because, Two Hearted IPA is such an effective therapist, he didn't need to reach out. Not right away. And that's part of the danger here. When we see things like anger, sarcasm, withdrawal, drinking, overworking, hyperfixating on control, isolating, irritability, usually what's going on under the surface is fear, grief, loneliness, shame, rejection, helplessness or powerlessness, disappointment, guilt, and maybe even feeling insignificant. And depending on where you served, how you served, what you went through, you may feel a whole bunch of those. Yeah, I just want to be really clear. These are normal human experiences. But for individuals who have gone through military training and service and maybe experienced loss or seen combat or have moved into civilian life, what these normal human experiences can be overcharged and supercharged. And I'm certain that some of you watching have experienced some of these before. And what's really important is to ask the question like, hey, what's really going on? When you're hurting, what emotion does your family see? And what might actually be happening underneath? I told you about this gentleman that I was talking with today who's just been through like 5 significant losses, at least in the last year. And the first thing I asked him after the pleasantries of like, hey, how are you? Good to see you, blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, how's your marriage? How's your wife doing? Because oftentimes I find when I'm working with individuals who are going through grief and loss, their spouse will actually tell me more about how they're doing than they will. And specifically, if the spouse, if and he said to me, he's like, "Well, my wife said it was a really good idea that I was talking to somebody because she said I've been really irritable lately." I was like, "You think? You, you've lost a lot of people and you're not talking about it, man. Of course you're irritable. Of course you're hurting. Of course you're in pain. Of course you're frustrated. The relationships around us will tell us." And so, what emotions does your family see? And what might actually be happening underneath? If you're wanting to start working through some of the pain that you've been through, or you're tired of feeling the way that you feel, it might be a good idea just to ask the people closest to you, hey, like, what emotions do you see from me? Um, I had something about a month and a half ago, just went through a really, really hard time at work. So just a really bad day, to be honest. And one that it has impacted me for quite a while. And I was a jerk to my wife most of that time. And I was not very patient at home with my son. And so my wife sat down with me and she's like, "Hey, what's really going on?" Here's what was really going on for me. The bad day at work was we had to fire an employee. I work at a church. We had to fire an employee, and he made some pretty bad decisions, and he made some questionable relationship choices with someone who wasn't his wife. That is grounds for termination when you work at a church. Okay. And for those of you who might not be familiar, I actually am on my second marriage. My first marriage ended because of infidelity. My wife was unfaithful. My ex-wife was unfaithful. And so whenever I encounter people who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing in their marriage with other people, it does something to me deep down inside, just deep down, and it hurts. And what I wasn't doing is talking to my therapist about how much it hurt. You know what I was doing? Being a jerk to my wife and impatient and irritable with my son. Like, none of us are immune from this. And so it's really, really important to ask the question, like, hey, what's really going on here? And here's the cost of silence. There's a difference between privacy and isolation. You don't owe everyone your story, but carrying everything alone eventually costs something. Cost number one, the body carries it. When emotional stress remains unresolved, our bodies can remain activated for up to 72 hours. Did you know that one stressful event can live in your body for 72 hours before your body recalibrates or adjusts? And if you're continually triggered, your body never actually has a chance to let down. People who have that stress living in their bodies experience muscle tension, disrupted sleep, headaches, exhaustion, hypervigilance, difficulty relaxing, gastrointestinal distress. Sometimes, you get the poops even though you didn't eat gas station sushi. That's a big one. Like, sometimes it really affects your GI system. Racing heart, increased startle response. When the nervous system is activated, you can move into fight, flight, freeze. You can start to shut down. You can feel like I need to confront this, or I need to get away, or I can't do anything, or I don't want to feel anything. And sometimes your mind says, I'm fine, while your nervous system is saying, we are still in danger. And it's entirely possible. In fact, I have this with clients that I walk through. We can work on de-escalating and regulating, getting the blood flow back up to the prefrontal cortex, and the brain can be firing. And you can say, I know that I'm okay, but your body still feels unsafe. That actually happens on a regular basis to people who have been through high trauma or high intense situations like military service, combat, and things like that. So the body carries it. Cost number two, relationships carry it. One of the painful realities about bottled pain is that the people we are trying to protect from our pain can eventually experience the consequences of it. We don't tell our spouse when we're overwhelmed. Instead, we're irritable. We don't tell our kids we're struggling. Instead, we're unavailable. We don't admit we're afraid. Instead, we become controlling. We don't admit we're lonely. Instead, we withdraw further. Is the way you're protecting people from your pain actually causing them to experience it differently? That's a question that I ask a lot of the people that I sit with. Cost number three, coping carries it. Eventually, we need relief. That relief can come through healthy things or through behaviors that temporarily numb what we're carrying. We've mentioned alcohol, food, pornography, gambling, work, scrolling, anger, isolation, constant activity. I just want to talk about scrolling here for a moment because these devices that we have readily available all the time are a huge problem when it comes to numbing out our pain for two primary reasons. One, it elevates our dopamine levels to unhealthy amounts, which then moves us into a place where we tank all that much faster. Two, it is a huge waste of time. And three, it actually neurologically engages us instead of helping us calm down. If you want to throw a fourth one in there, the blue light from your phone right before bed is one of the worst things you can look at before you go to sleep because the blue light in your phone is synthetic sunlight and it actually disrupts your sleep process. If you are going through difficult situations, you're working through pain, I tell my clients, man, it is so good to be on some sort of detox program when it comes to your digital devices. Um, in fact, Kyle, that might be, and Pam, that might be something good for us to throw on to this webinar series. I know we weren't necessarily planning on it, but I think talking about digital devices, it's a big thing right now. Also, did you know 70% of children and adolescents right now have what is called an AI companion, that they actually believe that AI is their friend? We're living in a super weird age where digital devices are actually impacting our neurobiology to significant amounts. Um, here's the thing. Most unhealthy coping started as an attempt to solve a legitimate problem. Whether it was, you know what, I'm a little stressed out, I'll have a drink, or I'll smoke, or I'll take a hit of that, or shopping makes me feel better, or whatever. I mean, they were legitimate attempts, and then they just get out of hand. The question isn't simply, why do I keep doing this? Sometimes the better question is, what is this helping me avoid feeling? Whenever I work with individuals who are going through some sort of addiction, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or some sort of substance abuse, one of the primary questions that I talk through is what's really driving the behavior? Before we get you to stop, which that might need to happen, what's really making you do it? Why do you do it? Most of the people I talk to don't feel addicted to alcohol because they're chemically hooked. It's because there's something else that's going on underneath that they're trying to escape. Here's why we don't talk about it. Number one, whenever we're going through pain, this is the number one thing that I hear, and you've probably said this to yourself: I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I don't want to be a burden to my family. I don't want to be a burden to my spouse. I don't want to be a burden to my kids. I want to help people. I'm the person who helps others. I don't want to be a burden to others. And here's what the translation of that is I've often found: my pain might be too much for someone else. That's one of the primary reasons why we don't want to be a burden, because what I'm going through might be too much for other people to hear. And that is true. That's reality. I have sat with people who have seen shit unimaginable, things that you can't even see in the movies. You know what? That is too much for some people. And so that's a legitimate reason. Some people, they don't get it, they don't understand it, they say the wrong things because they don't know what to say. And again, you don't have to share your story with everyone, you don't have to share your pain with everyone. But you got to find some people who are willing to listen and can hold it well with you. Here's another reason, and this is why people don't talk about it. Nobody would understand, which translates to being misunderstood might hurt worse than being alone. Have you ever had that, where you tell somebody what you went through and then it bombs and then they don't respond well to it, and you're like, see, I shouldn't have said anything. I knew this was going to happen. Nobody really understands. And I would rather be alone than have someone else hurt me or say the wrong thing or make some sort of comment out of their own anxiety. I was actually at a Christmas party last year, and I was sitting at a table with um, a young man. I say he's young, he's younger than me. He served in three combat campaigns. He did two tours in Afghanistan and one in Iraq, and he'd seen multiple explosions, and he had been through multiple explosions. He'd seen three of his friends pass away, three of his comrades in arms pass away on the battlefield. And he made a comment about at the table, he made a comment about how devastating combat can be. And somebody at the table who had never served, who had never experienced combat, made a comment. I think the comment was, "Well, you seem to be just fine. It can't be that bad." I know. I know. But people in their anxiety don't often handle those kinds of conversations well. And so there's a reason why, again, people would say, nobody would understand. How about this one? I hear this one. Talking won't change anything. I can't tell you how many times I've sat with people and been like, I've been to therapy before. It doesn't work. I'm only here because blankety blank is making me be here. I've had that. And it's true. You know what? Sometimes talking doesn't feel like it works. Here's what's really crazy. And I think I mentioned this on a previous webinar, but I'll mention it again. Did you know that 30% of the change equation in therapy is accounted for by do you like your therapist or not? Like if you look at the whole pie chart of change, 10% comes from insight, 60% comes from homework, 30% comes from the therapeutic relationship. I'm just going to say it. There are some really bad therapists out there. I know it. I've met some of them. And they're not fun to talk to, and they don't listen very well. And so talking doesn't feel like it works. And here's the really cool part about it. If you don't like your therapist, you can fire them and get a new one. That's awesome. I've done it twice. I highly recommend it because if you don't have a good one, it might not feel like it's working. But here's what I do find. Um, Talking will not change the past, but processing the past can change how much control it has over the present. You have to find a way to be able to talk about it with someone who will listen. And of course, I've had this one as well, and you've probably said this to yourself. I should be able to handle this. The person in my office today who has lost 5 people in the last year said those words to me. I should be able to handle this. Like, I should be stronger than this. I should be better than this. Can I just tell you a word about a word? I hate the word should. I can't stand it because it is inherently cruel and judgmental. And whenever we use the word should, we are setting ourselves up for a false expectation, one that we have created for ourselves. If you have seen horrors or been through trauma, can I tell you, you were never supposed to go through that. We were not, in my opinion, created to go through that kind of pain and suffering. It is a byproduct of brokenness in our world. And the human condition, it's not meant to hold on to that. Nobody should be able to handle this. Self-sufficiency and strength are not the same thing. Here's the truth. Strong people still need people. Strong people still need friends. Strong people still need people to talk with. And I think if we're honest, we can actually find better ways to process through what protected us back when we were in that space when we're going through pain, and maybe what protects us now. Couple of questions that I like to go through with my friends and the people that I sit with. Um, in terms of, I call this the armor exercise. So if you have some pen and paper in front of you, or you want to watch this webinar after the fact and go through this, in terms of what we do to protect ourselves, I want you to either imagine or draw a piece of armor as we kind of walk through this. What did you learn to put on to survive difficult seasons? Some people I know learn to put on humor. In fact, I have quite a few friends who use dark humor as a coping mechanism when they're going through something hard. And they learn that growing up. They learn that from their parents. It's like, hey, if something's tough, we just make a joke about it. I learned some people learn to put on toughness. Some people learn to put on independence. Have you ever met anybody who says, I got this, even when they don't got this? That's a big one. It was like, hey, I got this. No, can I open the door for you? No, I got it. You got their arms full of groceries. That's my favorite. When you see somebody walking in when they've got like 6 different bags of groceries on their arms, and you try to get the door from like, no, I've got it. I'm fine. It's like, clearly you don't got it. No, we learn to put on independence. How about we learn to put on emotional distance? I have a very close friend who grew up in a family when they were really frustrated with each other. They just got quiet and they took space from each other and they got emotionally distant from each other. It's been pretty brutal for his marriage. Um, some people put on anger. Side note: if you're a man watching this, anger is the dominant emotion that we show when we're stressed out or going through pain. Some people learn to put on perfectionism. Some people put on control. Some people put on hyper independence, or always being useful, or never asking for help. What armor did you learn to put on to survive difficult seasons of life? Here's the next question: how did that armor protect you? You don't have to judge it. There's nothing, honestly. In fact, maybe 3 months ago, um, I work as a chaplain for one of the local police departments, and one of the staff members on the police department, her son died by depression, died by suicide, 13 years old. And I told all of the police officers in the department when I was walking through a debrief with them, the same thing I'm going to tell you now. Dark humor helps. Sometimes it really, really helps. It may seem wrong, it may seem bad, but it really, really helps. And so you don't need to shame. If you go to humor, you go to toughness, you go to independence, you go to anger, you go to perfectionism, you go to control. That armor can be really, really useful. Maybe emotional distance can keep you focused. Maybe humor can get you through a terrible situation. Maybe control can create some safety for you. Maybe independence can help you survive. Here's the real question: not just how did it protect you, but where is that same armor costing you today? Because the byproduct of humor in a terrible situation is it actually keeps you from feeling other emotions, and then you just use sarcasm and you can't dig any deeper. Independence can keep you lonely. Control can actually move you from safety to a place where you feel more anxious. One thing I tell my clients is that the lie of anxiety, because anxiety lies to us, anxiety tells us that we can worry or control our way to peace. And over the last 10 years, I have yet to meet someone who could ever worry themselves out of an anxious situation. The only thing that worry does is make us feel more anxious, period. And control works the same way. It leads us into a place where if we don't have control of everything, we feel more anxious. And did you know that Americans can only control about 15% of what they think they control, and we think we control a lot? Don't believe me? Go back to 2020 and see what happened to the human soul in the midst of the pandemic. Control's a big one for us. So all of that armor can cost you. And here's the deal: you don't have to hate the armor that protected you to recognize that you may not need to wear it everywhere anymore. I want to maybe walk through here a really simple way to break the cycle of how this bottled up pain works. And I want you to give an acronym here to name what it is that you're going through. So to name it, you have to notice what is happening before trying to fix it. I actually ask my clients when they're noticing to answer the question, where do I feel this pain in my body? Do I feel tightness in my chest? Do I clench my jaws? Do I have racing thoughts? Do I have a desire to escape? Do I have anger rising? Learn the warning signs that your body gives off to notice what's really going on. And then you're going to acknowledge, instead of saying, I'm fine, try something like, hey, something's happening inside me right now. Like, I don't like the way that I feel right now. I am not happy with what's going on in my body right now. Again, a really close friend who I've worked with for years, her husband went through horrific trauma growing up as a child. Whenever he gets anxious, he just gets really quiet and irritable. And he doesn't like to talk about how he feels, because talking about how he feels makes him feel more uncomfortable on the inside. So whenever he gets really crabby and irritable, you know what she says? She says, I'm sorry you feel so badly inside right now. Just to validate, name and acknowledge the experience. So you want to name it. You first want to notice, and then you want to acknowledge. And then M, you want to make meaning out of it. And that's really asking the question, what's really going on? So instead of saying, why am I so angry? How about this? What happened right before I got angry? What might I be afraid of? What about this feels threatening? What am I grieving right now? What am I trying to protect right now? You want to notice it, you want to acknowledge it, you want to make meaning out of it. And then finally, you need to express it. Pain needs safe places to go. Expression might look like this: talking to your spouse, calling a trusted friend, talking with another veteran. And I know OIS does such an incredible job with this, but if you can talk with other people who have been there and experienced it, oh, that can be so healing for you. You can meet with a counselor. You can journal. You can pray. You can have physical activity. You can have creative expression. You can go to support groups. Expression is an explosion. Breaking the silence doesn't mean unfolding or unloading everything on everyone. It means learning to release pain intentionally instead of leaking pain unintentionally. Because here's the thing: if we don't express what's really going on, it's going to find a way out. And it's probably going to happen in a way that's going to hurt the people around us or complicate our lives even further. I also want to just really encourage you as we kind of move into a time where we can maybe ask some questions. You need to know when the weight is too heavy. Professional support is actually really helpful, and there are times when pain requires more support than a friend or a spouse can provide. If your pain is leading to significant changes in functioning, like you're having trouble with relationships, you're having trouble keeping a job, you feel persistently hopeless, you see an increase in substance abuse or use, you have uncontrollable anger, severe isolation, inability to sleep, maybe recurring traumatic memories. That's something that I actually asked this friend of mine who was in my office today. I said, hey, are you dreaming about this? Are you having trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep? Because if you are, we need to talk about this. If you have thoughts of harming yourself, or somebody else. Those are spaces where we really need to consider professional help. We don't measure strength by how much weight someone can carry alone. Sometimes strength is recognizing when the weight requires another set of hands. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I got some of those, you may be in a space where a professional is going to be really important. I want to leave you with this challenge and then open it up to some questions. I call this the one person challenge. Um, I want everybody in this webinar to think of one person, someone safe, someone trustworthy, someone they don't have to impress. And then ask yourself this question: what is one thing you've been carrying that you've never actually put into words? Not your entire story, not every trauma, just one sentence. And I want to give you this challenge. Within the next 48 hours, tell that one safe person one true thing. Could be, hey, I've been struggling more than I've admitted. I'm angry and I don't completely understand why. I'm exhausted. I miss who I used to be. I'm scared. I've been feeling alone. I think I need some help. I got a text message today from someone who's just going through it, and they said, "Could you just pray for me? Because I'm I think I'm at my limit. I don't know how much more I can handle. I keep wanting God to show up, and I know He's there, but I just don't feel like He cares. He's just." And I called him and I prayed for him. I just listened because I can't fix what he's going through, but I can be there for him. Here's the thing: pain wants to keep us isolated. It tells us, keep it together. Don't let anyone know. You should be stronger than this. Handle it yourself. But healing usually means moving in the opposite direction, toward honesty, toward connection, toward allowing ourselves to be known, toward discovering that asking someone to help carry the weight isn't weakness, it's human. Pain kept in silence doesn't necessarily stay silent. Eventually, it speaks through our bodies, or our behaviors, our relationships, and our choices. And breaking the cycle begins when we give pain a safe place to speak. So I'm going to open it up here. If anybody's got questions or wants to share some thoughts, be happy to do that.
Well, Josh, I'm never afraid to talk. But just listening to this, from my experience, and that is one thing that I do, um, I can struggle with quite a bit. And, when it comes to talking to people, I find that my fear lies in the fact that I don't know what's going to come out of it. So
Yeah.
because of that, like, and you mentioned it too, there's a dark space within that. So between the combat and everything else, and even my upbringing, and even now, I'm more afraid of that dark space
Yeah.
than I am of what I went through. And that really hinders me at times of talking through it, because I truly am afraid. And I went through a therapist session at the VA, talked to a couple different therapists, and I struggled to get into the depths of what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Um, I recognize that what I went through wasn't normal. And I understand that, but processing it really, I don't have bad dreams, and I don't want to have bad dreams. So some of that's the fear of that, and going back and reliving everything all the time. Um,
Yeah.
that I can see as just from my perspective, that could be a struggle for a lot of different people. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a really good point because, the hard part is healing is hard and sometimes things get worse before they get better. And that's actually one of the reasons why sometimes people stop going, is because it gets too intense. And that's a reality too. And it's something I talk about with my clients as well. It's like, hey, this might actually get worse for a little while before it gets better. But you got to hang on because the healing is worth it.
yeah, yeah, and I find I'm just thankful that we had the podcast happen tonight, and the topic hit tonight. And I'll be open about this too. So yesterday at church, we were talking through Mark. And for those that believe in God or faith, just the story behind the feeding of the 5,000 in Mark, and then the subsequent trial that the disciples went through on the Sea of Galilee immediately after that. And, just a reminder that they need to rely on something other than themselves. Their power can't get them through.
Yeah.
And that's, talked to me in volumes yesterday a little bit, that I can't do everything all on my own. I can't take all the pressure. I can't get to the point where I'm supposed to go without having somebody else there to support me.
Right.
And that could be for anybody. That could be a spouse. It could be a pastor or a therapist or just a process, something higher, that you believe in, that you're working towards, that you confide in. I do think that there's a lot of reality in that, where and when the disciples realized that they didn't get it the first time, then it clicked for them. They're like, holy cow, like he was trying to tell us that all we needed was him. And then all we could think about was how fast can we row to get to the other side of the Galilee.
Right.
Really, really a cool message from Sean yesterday. So,
Cool.
but just ties right into this, that we can't do it on our own. And I know we're trained to handle it on our own. I think we're taught, in the military, you're taught to take it and get rid of it. You embrace the suck, suck it up and drive on it and move on. And
Yeah.
we're never taught how to have that camaraderie at a deeper level than just the battle.
Yeah.
And I find that OIS is that one spot where that you can find that camaraderie, and you can get to that deeper meaning of what, that true brotherhood really is, where we can support each other, and it's all open and it's safe.
Yeah.
Because there's no one there that's going to judge anybody else, because we've all been through different stuff, but we all know it's all impacted everybody around us. So
yeah, I love that. I agree. Johnny, any comments from you? I saw you nodding a couple of times. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Johnny. We'll see if we can.
Okay, I'm green light now.
yeah,
Got you now.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for the conversation this afternoon. That was really nice. Something I needed to hear. When I have a lot of pain in my life. I've been retired since 1998. After I did my 20 years, I got my 100% disability for PTSD and bad knees and bad clicker and things like that. But I had a lot of pain. My wife died the day I retired, so I had a lot of grief in my life. My second wife, 4 years later, she was on dope, and I got rid of her. Well, we parted in 4 months after we got married. And now I'm married to a very beautiful woman. My life is a lot better. And I want to say the pain and grief that I went through, now that I've processed it, and I'm not 20 or 30 or 40 no more, I'm 68. Now that I've processed most of the grief, and I can't say all of it, but when I've processed most of the grief, I look at it and tell myself, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
It's a learning experience, because everybody goes through trials and tribulations. And I think we can learn from and change our values, or adjust our idiosyncrasy to be balanced. Because if you get a good balance in your life with good and bad, you seem to be on that level where it's okay. And I think there's a plateau that most of us want to be on, is that a level plateau, so we can deal with stress when it comes up, because you got to expect it. It's part of life.
Yeah.
I mean, people are going to die, sun's going to go down, rain's going to come, thunder's going to come. You got to accept these things.
Yeah.
And the way you process them has a lot to do with your own character, your own value system.
Yeah, totally.
And I really believe that. And if you can adjust your value system, then you can make change.
Yeah.
And if you can make change, you can adjust.
Yep.
And I think that's the way I deal with stress. If I can't deal with it, then I pray to the Lord about it, and I let it go for a little while and come back. And maybe when I find somebody that I feel is qualified or has the experience, I'll ask them questions about my problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I might be able to process it.
Yeah.
But I don't just throw it out there. You know, I don't
No.
just throw it out there for somebody. No, I got to find the right person to do that with.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to do that, but sometimes I'm shy about it.
Yeah.
Because it's personal and it hurts.
Well, and,
You know,
and I think
like,
that's really
go ahead.
wise. That's really wise. I mean, that's not everybody can handle it, and that's okay. It's okay.
I know. Give it to God and let it go. You know, that's a simple way to put it, but it's not an easy way to do it.
Yeah, it's true.
Because you get that memory, it keeps coming back. And if it's beating you to death, then you got to change something. You got to change something inside of you. Find out what was your learning purpose of that, what you're struggling with. Because if you're having bad dreams, you got to figure out what's causing them.
Totally.
And that's what you need to work on. That's part of your other life that might have happened to you. There's some signal there, that's, like you said, triggering. There's some signal there that you need to get on top of and either accept, change yourself, or give it to God. And if you don't believe in God, that's okay. Give it to your feelings and emotions that you don't need that anymore. You got to outgrow it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I process things. And thank you for helping me process today.
Yeah, and I thank you for sharing. I think that you're exactly right. I appreciate so much even just the conversation on, hey, let what you've been through shape your values, because your values at the end of the day, you might not know what to do in every situation, but if you have a strong enough value set, it can hold you while you're going through it.
Right.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Go ahead, Kyle. You want one more thing?
Yeah, just Johnny reminded me of something, you know, and that's, I think it goes to say, like, if we can't work through things, and I love the fact that you said just give it to God. And you know, I think we are brought up in a culture where we have been, and I've been told this, and I think it's a flat out lie, that, you know, and I've told you this before, Josh, you know, everybody used to say, well, God never gives you anything more than you can handle. And I honestly believe that's a lie, because it's just a feel good moment, right?
Yeah.
And then Johnny, what you said made me think about this, because really the reality is God never gives you more than he can handle. Right. And he can handle anything as long as you let him deal with it. And I think that's a perfect example of what you said, is giving it to him and letting him work through it and own it and lift it for you, because we're not supposed to, like what you said, Josh, we weren't made to handle it. No. We were made to rely on him.
I appreciate that so much. That statement, God will never give you more than you can handle, actually comes, it's taken out of context. It says God will never let you be tempted beyond your capacity, and he'll always provide a way out. The Bible doesn't say anything about God never giving you more than you can't handle. In fact, if you read through the Bible, it seems like God gives people a lot more than they can handle most of the time, so that they're forced to depend on him.